महादेव शम्भो शिव शङ्कर महादेव शम्भो शिव शङ्कर शरण आवत तुम्हारे अभयंकर शरण आवत तुम्हारे अभयंकर जय गिरिजापति दीन दयाला जय गिरिजापति दीन दयाला सदा करत संतन प्रतिपाला महादेव शम्भो शिव शङ्कर महादेव शम्भो शिव शङ्कर
Good evening and welcome to all as we gather once again in the vibrant city of Kolkata to bask in the brilliance of literary and enchanting world of conversations. I, Nilisha Agarwal, SAS Women of Kolkata, deem it my distinct pleasure to welcome each one of you to yet another exquisite literary soiree hosted by Prabha Khaitan Foundation under its initiative An Author's Afternoon. It is an afternoon, as you all know, dedicated to an enchanting conversation circling around the life and works of a distinguished author and conversationalist. And today it is my pleasure to welcome Sagarika Ghose for the evening. Today's session is in association with Taj Bengal with the support of SAS Women. The media partner for today's event is My Kolkata. The event is in association with patronage from Shree Cement Limited as their CSR activity. Before an insightful, awaited conversation unfurls, allow me to talk a few words about Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a non-profitable trust committed to humanitarian and socio-cultural causes. Late Dr. Prabha Khaitan established it as a charitable trust in the early 1980s. Based in Kolkata, it is committed to supporting women's empowerment, gender equality, literature, culture, and performing arts. Highlighting the importance of music as an indispensable art form, holding a paramount significance in our lives, Prabha Khaitan Foundation has introduced the concept of Music of the Month for every month. Music of the Month for March, Mahadev, is a tribute to Lord Shiva, his might, strength, and benevolence. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce the star author for today, Sagarika Ghose. Sagarika Ghose is an Indian politician, journalist, columnist, and author. She's been a journalist since 1991 and has worked at many big media houses. She has won several awards in journalism and is the author of 2 novels, as well as the biography of Indira Gandhi, Indira, India's most powerful Prime Minister. She is currently the consulting editor of the Times of India. In 2022, her biography of former Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was released. In conversation with her, we have Payal Mohanka. Payal Mohanka started her career as a journalist with the Illustrated Weekly of India and spent over a decade with the magazine covering a wide range of current affairs and social issues. In the late 90s, she was a part of broadcast journalism and joined TV18, where she reported for India Business Report on BBC World and CNBC India for almost 8 years. Later, she directed a documentary on Chandranagar, a former French colony, titled Little France on the Hooghly, and a documentary on Mother Teresa, From Saint to Sainthood. Her first book, In the Shadows, Unknown Craftsmen of Bengal, was published. A freelance journalist, she writes for Rediff.com and The Quaint. Now, with further ado, over to you, Payalji.
And I'll just dive straight into the conversation. Sagarika has made big news last month. She's not just an author and a journalist, now she's a member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha. Through your career, through your entire career as a journalist or author, did you ever see yourself as a politician? Have you dealt with politicians for many decades now?
First of all, thank you. Is it wrong? Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Actually, I didn't, and I always say, what do you do when you scrutinize politicians all your working life? You've torn politicians to shreds. You've torn the political system to shreds. You've written biographies tearing politicians apart. What do? You join politics. So that it's not the logical thing to do. But no, so I didn't see myself as a politician, nor did I see myself in the Rajya Sabha. But there comes a time, Payal, in life when, there's a sort of crunch moment. And I got offered this position.
Was it an absolute surprise?
It was
or
a
were there some
complete
hints
surprise.
along the way?
No. It was a complete surprise. Actually, to be honest, I had been offered it 2 years ago as well. But at that, sorry, in 2018. At that time, I was, full-time working journalist, and I did not take it up. It was just a vague kind of suggestion. But this time, the offer was made, and I saw it as a tremendous recognition, and also, a kind of responsibility for my home state. And because I'm worried about what's happening in the media, because I'm worried about what's happening to Indian democracy, because I'm worried about what's happening to our civil rights, I decided this was crunch time. I had been out of the newsroom for 3 years, and I had a why the heck not moment, and so I
And what was
plunged
your
in.
family's reaction? Because everybody knows Rajdeep Sarkisar, your husband,
Yes.
has a very good rapport with Didi. Didi has even cooked fish for him.
Yes, she has.
a couple
She
of
has.
times.
She's a very good
So
cook.
everyone thought that maybe him, but you picked him to the post.
I pipped him to the post. I also pipped him to the Rhodes Scholarship. So he had. I don't think he's ever quite forgiven me. It's kind of, I don't think Rajdeep has still forgiven me for getting the Rhodes. I don't. I really think this is one of those unresolved situations in our marriage. but now I think no, he is very very happy and very
What was
supportive.
his initial reaction?
So his initial reaction was, what? Because we were in the middle of a wedding actually, and there was a sangeet going on, very loud sangeet. And in the middle of this loud sangeet, I pulled Rajdeep aside and I said, I'm going to be in the Rajya Sabha. So Rajdeep at that time thought this was the song that perhaps I was,
Dance to.
no, that's dance to, or that I was echoing the words of a song in the Sangeet, and he was like, "What? Where? How?" Anyway, but finally it dawned on him that this was real and it was happening, and he was extremely happy. I think he was quite.
And how smooth do you think this transition is going to be? Because as a journalist, you fearlessly spoken your mind.
Yes.
Now it will have to be politically correct.
Actually, no. I mean, I think now I feel a kind of burden being lifted off my shoulders because, increasingly as a journalist, and I don't know how many of you know what's happening in the media today. It's it's a minefield. There are areas you can't go. There are things you can't say. There's censorship here. L.K. Advani had this famous line: "You were asked to bend and you crawled." So the media is not just crawling; it's really kind of prostrate. And I think that the suffocation of being in a very muzzled environment is actually relieved by being in a space where you are open to voice opposition to things that you think are wrong. And when there are certain constitutional limits that are being breached, or when there are liberties that are being attacked, when certain questions that need to be asked can't be asked in the media, and you can ask them as a member of the opposition, that's a relief for me. I do think that India's multi-party democracy is in danger. So in this situation, to shore up the political opposition, to me, is a worthwhile thing to do.
But you're entering the fray at a time when the TMC is going through its worst challenges.
Yeah.
Allegations of misrules,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
teachers' recruitments.
Yes.
How do you deal with all this?
Well, I think that in the life of any political party, of course, there are challenges, governance challenges. There are challenges when you're ruling a state. I think you have to judge a government by what it does. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. In the recent events that have happened in Kali, we have seen arrests. We have seen arrests of TMC leaders, whether it's Partho Chatterjee, whether it's Jyotipriya Mullik, whether there have been the Sharoda accused who was arrested in Jammu and Kashmir. So there have been arrests. The law is taking its course. Justice is being delivered. The land that is being taken over in Kali is being returned. In contrast to the fact that you have a star MP of the BJP in Delhi, Mr. Brijbhushan Sharan Singh, who was actually accused by women wrestlers of sexual harassment. He's a TADA detainee. He's charged under TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Practices Act. He has been charged under POSCO, child sexual offense. The wrestlers were literally protesting on the street, and they were dragged away from the street, and he roams free. He roams free. The BJP fielded as its Asansol candidate before he withdrew one Pawan Kumar Singh, who is to make videos called Bangal Ki Sautan, Bangal Ki Mal, Bangal Ki Hasina, and showing Bengali women in various lights. And this is a person who's going to be your member of parliament from Asansol, or your candidate from member of parliament from Asansol. So we mounted a protest against this, and he had to withdraw his candidature. The other BJP candidate from Barabanki, who recently again got fielded, again there were videos of him with I won't describe the videos, but there were videos. So he too had to withdraw. You've had attacks against women in Unnao. You've had attacks against women in Hathras. They have not been have been dealt with, and particularly I want to say also about Manipur. I mean, the National Commission of Women came to Bengal and said there should be president's rule in Bengal, but the National Commission of Women didn't go to Manipur, which has been literally on fire for months, and there were videos of women being paraded naked and not called for president's rule in Manipur. So Bengal is in a far better place than Manipur. So I think the what I'm trying to say is that yes, when crimes have taken place, when assaults have taken place, there should be zero tolerance for crime, zero tolerance for any kind of assault on women, zero tolerance on corruption. But when a government is at least acting, give that government a chance to act. Don't destabilize the government. Give it a chance to act. And also then justice must be done across the board. You can't say that when you're with me, then you're absolutely clean. When you're not with me, then you will be prosecuted.
While the BJP has to answer, of course, they are looking at Sandesh Khali as a game changer.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister has been quoted as, "Har choot ka jawab vote se lena hai." Do you think that Sandesh Khali will actually...
I don't think so, Payal. I don't think so, because the women have come out with terrible tales of land dispute. They've come out with tales of assault. They've come out with tales of, what has happened to them in Sandesh Khali. But when they were asked, who will you vote for? They said TMC and Lily. So a vast majority of them. So in that sense, I have to say that, there is a Bengal model of women's empowerment. There is. You've got a Konyashri program, which is a recipient of the United Nations Prize for Public Service. 83 lakh women are benefiting. You've got Ruposhri, you've got the Shashtoshati, you've got the Lokhir Bhandar, and these are, path-breaking schemes. And plus, I think Bengali women, are more empowered than women in North India. They may not be, they are educated, they are forward-looking. I also, in my experience, I was a girl child and I was an only child. And then growing up in a Bengali family, I never felt that this was a problem. I never ever felt that an only child who is a girl child is a problem. And so this preference for sons and preference for the eldest born must be a son. In fact, when I was writing my book on Indira Gandhi, she has a lovely line. She's saying, my family was progressive enough not to want a son as a firstborn, but also not progressive enough to feel a little disappointed that the firstborn wasn't a son. She was always had to live this down that, Jawaharlal's firstborn, Jawaharlal being the sort of, the star of the family, that his firstborn was not a son. But I never experienced any of that. In Bengali families, we don't. I don't know if, Bengalis here would share that. We literally don't grow up with any sense of deprivation that we are not some boys. And I think that that is quite remarkable, actually. And Mamata Banerjee's life story is remarkable. And I mean, from a biographer's point of view, she's created a political.
I never thought of doing a book.
I did.
A book?
I mean, I did think of doing it. I mean, I would love to do it, maybe at a later stage. But think about it. You're a startup. She started a political startup. A woman in politics without a family, no male mentor. This is not Indira, daughter of Jawaharlal, Vijay, Vasundhara Raje, daughter of Vijay Raje, Mayawati, who derived her mentorship from Kanchi Ram, or Jayalalitha from MGR, or Mehbooba Mufti from Mr. Mufti. She has no family. She has no family member in politics. She's a lone woman who stood up to the might of the left front year after year after year. You know, we complain of trolling on the internet. She was literally beaten on the street, literally, and stood up to this and has created a political startup, which is a party of her own. I mean, this is actually quite a remarkable achievement for a woman. You know, and on Women's Day, I think, and she's the only woman chief minister of Bengal. So only woman chief minister of India. So I think her story is remarkable, and it could only happen in Bengal.
And as a journalist, you're no stranger to her temperament, her mercurial mood.
Yeah.
I still remember 2012. There was this event at the town hall in Calcutta, and
Yeah.
Sagarika was anchoring the program, and a young presidency college student asked the question. Didi had a fit. Didi called her a Maoist and staged a walkout. And I still remember the look of shock on your face as you watched her screen figure.
Yes.
What did you go through at that point, and how do you think of it when you look back now?
Well, you know, in those moments, I thought, is she really going to walk out? Is she going to actually go? I mean, wait. She's not really actually going to go, right? She's just sort of standing up or something. But no, she actually left. And so I was marooned on stage, looking like a bit of a penguin on a block of ice. But the kids were all very cooperative, and they made the show happen and all of that. But I would say that was explained by the fact that she had just come to power. It was 2012. I've been marking 1 year, and she was surrounded by, at that time, I think she felt, by a lot of hostile forces. She had come to power on the back of a movement. It was a very difficult time for her. She's evolved, hugely. I mean, it's a 360-degree evolution that has happened. But what I appreciate about her is that she never broke off contact with me. In fact, I went to see her after that, and she continued to take questions from me. We continued to have a relationship. But I think it broke her heart that she did that, I think the feeling was, and why did I do that? And I think, and I think that kind of established a kind of, modus vivendi between us, because after that, she used to take all my questions, whatever I wanted to ask her, whatever I wanted to say, and she would always come on my program. And I think she felt a certain, she felt a certain sort of that it was needn't have happened. And since then, we've been on very good terms.
And if a media person gets a Rajya Sabha ticket, could it see it as a reward for kindness? How do you take it?
Reward for kindness. I've been very critical of all political parties, and I've, in my time as a journalist, I've been fiercely independent, and I've been fiercely sort of critical of all political dispensations. But I do see this as a sort of recognition from my home state, Bengal being my home state, and I also see it as part of a solidarity of those of us who are, I believe, fighting to keep democracy alive.
And just when the BJP thought they had a short respite from a feisty TMC MP, they have you to contend with.
They do. They have me to contend with. They have two of us, all of us to contend with. They have Mamata Banerjee to contend with, and she's going to fight her corner. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what I resist most of all is this notion that there can only be one party, one leader, one religion, one dress, one food, one language, one God, one temple. I mean, you can't have that. Ours is a diverse, multifarious, dizzyingly, incorrigibly diverse country. The future is federal. We can't insist on one language. We can't insist just on one dress. We can't insist just on one way. And why should there only be one leader? Everybody has a right. Everybody has a right to be a politician. Everybody has a right to contest elections and be in public life. You can't use state power, the power of the state, to make life impossible for your opponents. Indira Gandhi did do a bit of that, but I think now it's been taken to its maximalist heights, and I think that that in that sense, I think some very basic elemental battles have to be fought now. And the time for non-alignment, I mean, I've always been very, very non-aligned in the media. I've been very fiercely independent. But I think now the time for non-alignment is over. I think we do have to stand up and be counted and ask which side are we on? Are we on the side of hatred and majoritarianism, or are we on the side of democracy?
Which is very confident that they're going to make a dent this time.
I think so. I think they are confident, and I think that I don't know. I mean, electorates are notoriously unpredictable, so we don't know. What bothers me particularly, Payal, is when you have state power, and aside from the book I've written on Indira Gandhi and Atal Bihari Vajpayee, I've also written a book called Why I'm a Liberal.
Yeah, I think I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, what really bothers me is when state power intrudes into personal life in a way that is happening now. You know, the government can't tell you what to eat, what to write, what to wear, what to love, who to marry, how to live your life, what to read, what to eat. You know, I mean, you have a situation in Uttarakhand where a live-in couple has to take the permission of a registrar in order to go in for a live-in relationship. And then if the live-in relationship ends, you have to go again to the registrar and say, do we have permission to end the relationship? Why should a government registrar decide whether a relationship should be ended or not? I mean, think of the vast avenues of corruption that exist. So I'm against executive overreach. I want to roll back government power, and I think executive overreach in all dispensations should be resisted.
And as you mentioned, your book, Why I'm a Liberal, and it's a manifesto for Indians who believe in individual freedom.
Yeah.
There's one case in Bengal which is a big black mark on Gidi's career as a politician, and that's the Ambikesh Mahapatra. Now, this chemistry professor, JU, 12 years ago, he just forwarded a cartoon. And even yesterday I spoke to him, he's still suffering. There have been criminal charges. He's dealt with 2. He's still got 1 more. His girls study in America. He doesn't have a passport to go and visit them. They took away his passport. Now they've given him one just for the year, and he can't get a US visa with a passport that's valid only for the year. And this is a big black mark against him because his punishment is crazy. What was the crime? Forwarding an innocuous cartoon. That was a very funny cartoon at that time, I would say. But now as a Rajya Sabha, you must do something.
I must, and I think, yes, of course. But you know, we must also look at Omar Khalid, who's in jail for the last 2 years. Siddiq Kapan, G.N. Sai Baba, 99% disabled and imprisoned in the Anda cell. You have Sudha Bhardwaj, honored by Harvard University, imprisoned in jail under UAPA. Prabir Purkayastha, founder of Newsclick, is a journalist imprisoned under UAPA. These are terrorist charges. So, I mean, one incident in 15 years is bad, but it needs to be looked at. And I think at that time, again, I would put it in the same category as my show, although in a different area, different, less. I mean, of course,
you've written about Ambikesh Mahapatra.
I have. I've met him and interviewed him as well. And it was, I think at that time, the government was new, it was immature, perhaps not as evolved as it is today. And there was a threat perception, there was a perception she was being encircled from all sides. But nonetheless, it was a case of perhaps executive overreach, which can be looked at.
Government's not getting
He was convicted and rolled back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Despite that, he had cases against him.
Yeah.
And even now, there's one criminal case.
But you know, one case in 15 years is not a bad record. I mean, please look at Delhi. Please look at the other states. I mean, you have people in jail indefinitely under terrorism charges. Students in jail under terrorism charges. You have journalists in jail under sedition charges. Rajdeep, my husband, has sedition against him. So, no one is safe from the.
You mentioned your book review?
I had a book review. There was a criminal defamation filed against me for a book review. The way these laws are being weaponized, really nobody is safe.
Moving away from politics, you come from a family of extremely accomplished men.
Yes.
Your aunts, the late Arundhati Ghosh and Justice Prabha politics. Tell us about the influence they might have had on you in your growing years.
Yeah, as I said, I come from a Bengali Bhadralok family, and so it was a lots of female role models. I had a very exceptional grandmother as well. She was a freedom fighter, and she was someone who used to encourage me to climb trees and do sport. And my aunt is like the aunts of P.G. Woodhouse. I don't know if anyone's read P.G. Woodhouse. There's Aunt Agatha, whose laugh is like the breakers slashing against rocks. The shh. That sound, that slightly terrifying sound of the aunt's laughter. So I remember my aunts being this really force of discipline and terror in my life, saying, at the age of 7, at the age of 8 or something, today we will go to the museum. And I would say, no, but I want to read my meals and we will leave at 7:30. So, I would be carted out to the museum. So they were wonderful human beings. And they are, my aunt Arundhati was full of fun and vivacious, and she was a very sort of she smoked cigarettes with great style, and she was always in her beautiful saris, and she was a tremendous role model. My aunt Ruma, who's the former Justice of the Supreme
She
Court.
has a special place in my heart, as I told you.
Yes.
I had just one legal case that in my life, and I won it, and she was the judge for that.
Yeah. And Aunt Ruma was, she's another great influence. She was always, again, very, very bright, very lively, rushing about all the time. I remember her in her sari just running about, and she would say that, does everyone here follow Bengali?
Yeah.
So she would say that jara onnay kore tara kharap, kintu jara onnay shojjo kore tara aro kharap. So those who tolerate the wrongdoing are as complicit as in this in the act as those who actually committed. So they were both tremendously upright, very vivacious, and what I loved about both of them was that they were also great fun, and they sort of gave me lots of advice when I was getting married. And my aunt Ruma would say that once now that you've got married, one thing I'll tell you is that it helps to be a little deaf. Just certain things you don't want to hear, just pretend you didn't hear.
You don't have to hear.
And so just pretend you didn't hear, and you just tune out, and forget about it. So a little strategic deafness is always very very good. And so that was wonderful. And then I must say, my other influences, if I can race right along to my journalism career, I had two amazing bosses. I mean, when I started journalism, it was still very male dominated. I mean, the women could, do certain things, and men couldn't. Men did the most important beats. I remember when I first joined journalism in 1991, fresh out of Oxford, and I joined the reporters team, and there was this chief reporter called Yogendra Bali, and there was me and another boy who had joined, guy who had joined with me. And so Yogendra Bali looks at the two of us and he tells him, okay, there's this rally going on in Jantar Mantar, you go and cover it. And he looks at me and says, okay, why don't you look through some magazines? You go to the library and look through some magazines. So I said, oh, okay. I mean, I'm happy to look through some magazines. So I went to the library and looked through some magazines. We came back the next day. Again, the male reporter is there and I'm there. And he tells the male reporter, now you go and, follow up on your Jantar Mantar story, and you do that. And he looks at me and says, you go and look through magazines. So I was like, why should I keep going and looking through magazines? I'm not going to go and look through magazines anymore. I said, no, Mr. Bali, I don't want to go and look through magazines. I want to go where he's going. He said, oh, you don't want to read magazines? I said, no, I want to go and, cover the story. So I realized very quickly that you had to be a little pushy and that you were always going to be considered pushy. Then I realized you had to cultivate a certain strategic madness. If you have to cultivate, you have to be a little insane, a little off, a little cracked. If you're a little cracked, and people are quite scared of you, they she'll leave her alone. Let her do this, because otherwise she'll get into some sort of pit or something like that. Might as well send her to cover the story. So then I used to, push, ask for things to do, and I loved it. I loved being in the field. I was a field reporter, by instinct, and I loved it. That notepad in hand and going off into the field and doing things. So I loved it. And so, but you had to push your way a little bit to get in those days. This was 1991 when we used to make pages on bromide, and there was this cut and paste gang at night, who would make the pages, and they would go off at night. They were heavily unionized. The workers used to make the cut and paste pages. And at night, at 12 o'clock, they would say, Acha, hum lunch ke liye ja rahe hain. 12 o'clock at night. And they would all, go and have their powwas or whatever. And it was a very completely different culture. So from that, we have come now to the age of television, and television has changed the dynamics of women and men in journalism completely. I think the rise of television has created a female reporters who are now just as good as the men. They pick up their bags, they go into the field, and often I'm CNN, IBN. When we were running it, I couldn't tell who was a girl and who was a boy, because they were all, equally fit, and they would pick up the camera and go off into the field. But so it completely changed the dynamics. But I would still say there's a glass ceiling. I would also say there's a glass club. You know what I call the glass club, which is the after hours. What the men can do is lift the glass and create a little area of exclusion for themselves, which the women can't be part of. So there is a glass ceiling, there is a glass club, and women can rise and rise and rise. But after a certain point, you get stuck. So there is a problem there. But having said all of this, I had two amazing male bosses. I had Dilip Patgaonkar in the Times of India, who was a tremendous inspiration to me, and he helped me a lot. He used to point me in the direction of books, and he used to say, read this and read that. And I know you're doing journalism, but never forget to read. You must always read. And there was Vinod Mehta, who all of us just adored Vinod Mehta. I don't know if anyone here knows Vinod Mehta, but he was a complete eccentric, and he used to come to the reporters' floor and say, okay, who's got a defamation notice here? Nobody? What nonsense? What journalism you're doing? So he would talk like that, and he would tell us, and so he gave me another life lesson, Aunt Ruma told me to be deaf, and Vinod Mehta told me that at that time, I remember I just had my second kid. I just had my daughter, and there was a story that the British ICS officers, the last British ICS officers, were visiting India, and they were visiting the Mussoorie Academy, the IAS Academy in Mussoorie, and they were talking about their last days in India. So he said, I'd like you to do this, because I had a civil service background. My father was an IAS officer. And he said, why don't you go and interview these British ICS officers who are coming back and will relive their days in India and what they were doing in India and all of that. So I said, I would love to, but I have my kid. So he said, oh, take the kid. So I said, oh, take the kid. Yeah, he said, take the kid, take your maid, go by train, go and interview these British officers. So I said, but how am I going to do it? And he said, listen, you have to decide if there's something you want to do. If you want to do it, you just have to manage. You just have to manage. You just have to lump it and manage it and, do it. So I did. I took my kid, I took the maid, we went by Shatabdi, we went to Mussoorie, and these very frosty British, stiff upper lip, I say, old chap, they were sitting there with this Indian woman with her baby taking notes. It was a very interesting clash of cultures, but it was a great fun exercise. And in the end, they all appreciated me, and they were all playing with Tarini, who was then just about 7 months old, and she became a part of the proceedings. And so one learns that these are the things one can do, as a working mother. And I had very supportive, and I was very happy that I had supportive environment. And I have to say, just to end it, I also have an extremely supportive husband, who's not just supportive and happy for me, but he's unendingly proud, and that makes me very kind of just sort of really reinforces me a great deal.
That's excellent. That's amazing. And tell me, what got you interested in Indira Gandhi, and what tried to do the...
So Indira Gandhi was this happened in 2017. It happened, Chiki Sarkar of Jagannath approached me and said that we want to do a biography of Indira Gandhi for 2017, because it would be 100 years of Indira Gandhi. And so they wanted to bring out a 100-year commemoration of Indira Gandhi. And they said, we want to for you to do 3 biographies, so of 3 prime ministers. So I'm at the moment doing 3 biographies. I've done one on Indira Gandhi, I've done one on Vajpayee. Now you're going to ask me who the third is. Will you ask me who the third is? I can't tell you. I can't tell you. So the third is, who's the secret? I can't. Yeah, so I can't tell you who the third is. But so Indira Gandhi was... she was fascinating to do. And what I loved about Indira Gandhi is that she actually had a tremendous sense of humor. And she loved, it was to come out in 2017 to coincide with her 100th year. So she had a great sense of humor, and she loved saris. There's this lovely incident where she was touring North Bengal, and in those days they used to tour in open jeeps. There was no security, etc. She was standing and waving to the crowd, and next to her was sitting Mr. J.P. Dutt, who was the intelligence chief. And so she was waving to the crowd, and at one point she spots a young girl in the crowd, and who at that time actually happened to be my aunt, because she told me the story. Ruma Pal was in the crowd wearing a sari, and the person driving the jeep was my dad, because he was DC Darjeeling, and he was driving the jeep and sitting next to him. And so my dad told me the story. Sitting next to my dad, and there was JP Dutt, the intelligence chief. Mrs. Gandhi was standing up and waving to the crowd. She was waving to the crowd, and she suddenly says, "Mr. Dutt, what sari do you think that girl is wearing over there?" Pointing to my aunt.
Sister.
No, and so my JP Dutt, he was asking JP Dutt. So my father got really scared and didn't say a word because it was Ruma. And he said, so JP Dutt said, "Oh, I don't know, madam, must be some silk sari." She said, so she turned around to him and said, "Mr. Dutt, it is not a silk sari, it's a handloom from Coimbatore. What kind of intelligence do you gather?" And then on the same trip, she came to the circuit house. In those days there were the circuit houses where they used to stay. And she went into the loo, and she came out, and she told my father that, "Mr. District Commissioner, I really appreciate that you have put out new towels for me in the bathroom. But next time, I must tell you, when you put in new towels, wash them once. Because old new towels don't dry unless you wash them once." So she had all kinds of, sort of humorous anecdotes like this. And it's a tremendous story. It's a really tremendous life story. I approached it as a person looking at her as a character. She had a very complex relationship with her father, a very complex relationship with her husband. She was someone who, I like to describe her as someone who loved what she didn't like. She said she loved Indian democracy, but she didn't like it. She was not a Democrat. She said she loved the Indian press, but she didn't like it. She said she loved Feroz Gandhi, but she didn't quite like Feroz Gandhi. And so she kind of, was this complex creature. So she was like the original dabang in a handloom sari, and she had tremendous spirit. She was sort of the embodiment of courage, I would say. And she was a great patriot, and she had all her life very complicated relationships with people. Her mother was a great beauty. Her father was a dazzling personality. She was none of those when she was born and when she was growing up, and she always had a bit of a complex. So then Vajpayee was another great experience, because he was,
What inspired you to do that?
so that was Chiki's idea. This would be Indira, and then it would be Vajpayee. So again, very, very interesting personality, and again, extremely funny. The thing is, Vajpayee's jokes should actually be a book in itself, because he's full of jokes. And if you read my book, it's just hilarious. And I had this wonderful interview with a very close friend of Vajpayee's called Mr. Ghatate, who told me all the Vajpayee stories and, his love affair, which was a very fascinating thing, because Vajpayee lived all his life with the love of his life, who was married. He lived with her children, and her husband. And they were all a happy threesome. And in those days, in 1978, this is a great story. I have to tell you the story. This says something about press freedom. So in those days, in 1977, when Vajpayee was foreign minister, after the Janata Party had come to power, he was foreign minister in the Janata Party. And he was holding a press conference and saying about Tibet and China and Pakistan and, Indo-Pakistan relations, and talking about the foreign policy priorities. And a journalist stood up and said, everybody follows Hindi?
Yes.
Yeah. And a journalist stood up and said, Vajpayee ji, ye chhodiye ye Pakistan or Tibet ke baare mein. Aap ye bataiye, Mrs. Kaul kaun hai? Her name was Rajkumari Kaul, that was his lover. And Vajpayee, and think about it, this is journalism in those days, in the 1970s. And so Vajpayee thought for a while and said, Kashmir jaisa mamla hai.
It's lovely.
You imagine? Voted by 2 countries. Yeah, lovely answer. And so I mean, and saying it to a journalist. And what struck me about Vajpayee was that he never tried to hide it. He didn't have a problem with it. It was as if he was saying, I don't have a problem with this. She doesn't have a problem with this. Her husband doesn't have a problem with this. So why does anybody else have a problem? And of course the RSS was quivering with outrage, and it was there were the patriarchs were in a shudder about this.
Today's media would have reacted very differently.
Today's media would have, I think so. But he had no issues about it at all. And so, and Mrs. Kaul actually gave I found a very rare interview of Mrs. Kaul, she had given it to a woman's magazine in Hindi, saying that her husband, her Mr. Kaul, was very mature about the whole thing, and knew that Vajpayee and I were in love, and we've always been in love, and my husband accepted it, and we all lived together. It was like Rajdeep was like, every time I tell the story to Rajdeep, he looks very wistful. Wistfulness again. Acha, two husbands. Like, do not get any idea. Anyway, he again had this very he was a big drinker. Vajpayee was a big drinker. He was a big eater of non-vegetarian food, and he used to always make fun of his own party, which was very different from Vajpayee, which was much more sort of conservative and orthodox and completely in the Sangh mode. And Vajpayee would keep making fun of them. Once at a dinner, Ghatate told me the story. There was Nanaji Deshmukh, who was in the RSS, and there was Mr. Ghatate. And Nanaji Deshmukh said, दीन दयाल उपाध्याय मेरे सपने में आए हैं और उन्होंने बताया है कि चिकन नहीं खाना है, तो I can't eat this chicken. So Vajpayee thought for a moment and said, अरे नाना जी, इतने बड़े शख्स आपके सपने में आते हैं और बस यही कहते हैं कि चिकन मत खाओ. Doesn't he say anything else? So he had all these really funny stories, and he used his humor to actually make a very different BJP. Vajpayee's BJP was a very different BJP. Vajpayee had as his, than it is today, Vajpayee had as his advisor George Fernandez, Brajesh Mishra, Arun Shourie. In 1996, his government fell by 1 vote. I remember I was in Indian Express then, we were hating on Vajpayee all the time. It was a very different kind of a very parliamentary BJP. And Vajpayee, remember, was a member of parliament not for 10 years, not for 20 years, not for 30 years, not for 40 years. For 50 years, he was a member of parliament. And he used to always say that, हम अच्छा है कि हम election हार रहे हैं क्योंकि इंदिरा गांधी हमारे को मुस्कुराती है. अगर हम जीत जाते तो मुस्कुराती नहीं. So he was very happy that, at least she's smiling at me and I'm losing. That's fine. And he was really incredibly funny. Actually, one last story that I'll end. In 1989, Vajpayee had a health problem, and Rajiv Gandhi, with whom he was actually very friendly, sent him to the United States to get a treatment done. And then when he was in the United States, there was some other problem that was diagnosed. It was cancer. So at that time, he wrote a poem, Maut se than gayi. I am confronting Maut. I am confronting death. And he wrote this poem, and this poem was sent back to Delhi, and around party circles were all like, oh my God, Vajpayee has written about death. Maut ke baare mein likh rahe hain, kya Vajpayee ji mar ja rahe hain, kya ho raha hai, ye maut ke baare mein ye ho raha hai. So a lot of halchal in the Sangh and all that. Turned out it was a false alarm. He was treated and he got well. And he came back, and this story was told to me by Vajpayee's aide, Shiva Kumar. He came back and he was coming on the flight and he landed at Parliament. There was a huge crowd of party workers waiting to meet him. So Shiva Kumar said, Vajpayee ji, देखिए इतने लोग आए हैं, आपसे मिलने के लिए आए हैं. So Vajpayee thought for a while and said, हाँ, ये सोच रहे हैं कि अभी तो मौत के बारे में लिख रहा था, अब जिंदा कैसे लौट रहा है.
Titles of your 2 books on the Prime Ministers. One is India's most powerful Prime Minister, that's Indira Gandhi, and the Vajpayee one's called India's most loved Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So the third one, you can't share the name, but it's going to be India's most what Prime Minister?
I can't tell you. You know when it comes out, you know.
As an MP, what would you like to be? More powerful or more loved?
Oh, any day more loved.
And what kind of contribution do you see yourself making in the Rajya Sabha? And after this, we'll open up questions to the audience.
While I'd like to be a citizen parliamentarian, I'd like to also voice the demands of Bengal. There are certain issues I feel very strongly about. Education is one of them. Very closely studying the ASER report. I don't know if ASER, the ASER report that comes out every year. I mean, it shows that 25% of teenagers can't read beyond class 2 texts. So, it's a crisis in our education system. I'd like to get involved. I would like to also get involved in deepening democracy and making people aware of why democracy is precious, it's exceptional, it's real, it's the least worst form of government. We should hang on to democracy. We should not let it go, and it's worth fighting for. And so I certainly would like to use my position to not just take up these issues of education as well as deepening and making people aware of the importance of democracy.
Here you more part of the voice in Parliament. May you go from strength to strength. And I will take questions from the audience.
Have you decided who is going to be your role model as a parliamentarian?
Parliamentarian. I quite like Vajpayee. He had this great line. He said, पार्लियामेंट में होना अच्छा है, बस जाके वहाँ एक गर्मा गर्म भाषण ठोक दो और घर में आके पिक्चर देखो. I don't want to do that, but I'd love to be able to speak the way he did. He was a brilliant orator and a very substantive orator, and he used to pick up real issues. I think a lot of the time we don't appreciate how much work went into those early parliament speeches. There were issues of education, health, national security, land reform, a lot of these things were. So I'd like to be a conscientious and diligent parliamentarian. There was a great tradition of parliamentarians in the 40s and 50s. Meenu Masani, Anand Babu Pai, Vajpayee himself, Hiren Mukherjee. So they really worked at their speeches and worked at creating substance. And I'd like to do that. I'd like to put in real substance into the public discourse.
They're representing the gender.
Yeah, but half. Okay. Well, it's not, the glass is not fully full.
But the other thing, like when they're talking about Hillary Clinton, they speak more about her sartorial problems. When they are talking about, Kamala Harris, they're talking about her sartorial situation. They never say that about Biden. They never say that about Obama. So
yeah, totally. I think that I think there are large biases still existing. There are huge numbers. Look at the way women politicians in India are perceived. It's either Didi or Behenji or Amma. Didi is Mamata Banerjee, Behenji is Mayawati, Jayalalitha is Amma. Why isn't Modi called Chacha? Nehru is called Chacha. Why isn't Modi called, somebody's called Mama? Okay, Mama, we have Mama and Chacha, but why don't you have, the Papa or Bhaiya? Or, in the sense, why does a woman have to be slotted into a family member role in order for her to be publicly acceptable? So we were talking about the madness that we have to cultivate to get things done.
Women, the Indian DNA.
They
think they're getting respect.
Yeah, but it's also as a kind of that the person has to be slotted as a family member, and then I can accept her as a. For example, women politicians have to cultivate this persona of the virago, of the of a kind of eccentric, crazy person. Because when you're 3 feet tall and you're wearing a sari, when you're 3 feet, when you're 4 feet tall or 5 feet tall, and you're in a sari, and you're making your way in this brutally patriarchal world. Indian politics is brutal. The patriarchy is brutal. You have to be a little mad. You have to be a little of a bit of a Kali Ma. You won't get very far if you're sweet and soft-spoken and you hang back. You have to be someone who's a little bit of a assertive, let's lose her Kali avatar. So, which is why Jayalalitha, Mamata, Mehbooba Mufti, Vasundhara, Indira Gandhi, they played the role of this sort of iron lady and, iron dame, formidable dame, because you have to. You can't get very far. So, public life is incredibly difficult for women in India. Incredibly difficult. I mean, you're judged all the time. You have to. So yes, the biases, I mean, for example, look at the way Mayawati's pink salwar kameezes were constantly questioned, or we look at the way women politicians here are constantly, their clothes are constantly commented on. I, for example, when I was in television, I used to find people talking more about my appearance than talking about what nobody talks about Rajdeep's appearance or about, Ravish's appearance. But, my appearance is always dissected, hair, clothes, sari. So there is a tremendous amount of bias, yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
when you talk about who's made to retire from Rajya Sabha, so does it really
Rajya
help?
Sabha.
I thought it was
Lok Sabha.
Lok Sabha.
If you're talking about Mama.
Yeah.
I don't think she's retired. I
Not
think,
retired. She's asked to leave.
yeah.
Made to retire.
Yeah. Well, no. I
don't know how
certainly
to
get a ticket again. I'm sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
But there was a whole barrage against her. So when you talk of substance, I don't think can it come back, that substance of parliamentarianism?
I hope it can. There are some debates, that do take place that we don't often see. There are some that happen that are not covered on camera. But there was. I hope that Parliament survives. That's point number one. I hope that Parliament survives, because Parliament is the house of the opposition. It is the house of the people. It is the place where debate takes place. Vaad Vivad Samvad. The Constitution lives because Parliament lives. So I hope Parliament survives. I hope it does. It's not stunted and prorogued in any way. The kind of mass suspension of MPs that we've seen, the kind of mass the kind of mass disqualifications that we've seen. This is all terrible. But I'm hopeful. We live in hope that the days of debate and the days of argument and the days of questioning can come back, and that let's hope for the best. That's all I can say. That'll be a tragedy.
To add a very dismal note is I always keep feeling the feeling of dread in my stomach. for the
Yeah,
last
there's a
couple of
dread. Even
years.
I have a dread in
That
my
the
stomach.
genie's been let out of the bottle. And how can we put it back in? So,
There was a very telling phrase from P.N. Haksar, who who was the secretary to Indira Gandhi, who said that don't ever unleash the ghosts of partition. They should be kept dampened down, because if those ghosts come and begin to haunt the land again, we don't know where we'll go. So sadly, the ghosts are stalking the land again, and I think that let's just hope they can be put back.
yeah.
And you haven't mentioned Sushma Swaraj.
Of course, yes. Actually, I have mentioned her in many of my writings. Terrific parliamentarian, but look at it. Sushma Swaraj was a exceptional politician. I knew her closely. I interviewed her many times. Look at the way she was treated by her party. She was never a prime ministerial candidate. She was never considered a prime ministerial candidate, even though she was leader of the opposition. She was a star orator. But when she was external affairs minister in the Modi regime, she was never given an in into any of the big foreign policy moves. She was only on Twitter looking at who's lost her passport, who's lost her visa. So she was in a way marginalized. Vasundhara Raje, also another very remarkable politician, not a parliamentarian, but a remarkable politician, twice Chief Minister of Rajasthan. She's a regional satrap. She's one of the few women regional satraps of in North India. Again, she's been marginalized. So I don't think women politicians are getting space. I don't think women regional. I mean, where are the women chief ministers? Where are the women leaders in the Congress, for example? I mean, we have Sonia Gandhi, who was Congress president for 2 decades.
You're doing that Priyanka's gonna.
Yeah, but that is what the Ali Mazrui, the sociologist, has called male accession to female accession to male martyrdom. The male dies and becomes a martyr, and the female steps into the shoes of his martyrdom. So that is not a female making her own way. The only woman who's made her own way in politics is actually Didi. She's really not had a man to smooth the way for her at all. So, aside from the female accession to male martyrdom, the fact is where are the women chief ministerial faces today? Why is there only one woman chief minister? Why is there no strong woman regional leader? I think Nirmala Sitharaman has certainly broken a glass ceiling by becoming the first woman finance minister, but one doesn't get the feeling she's taking decisions, that she's in the decision making elite. Nor is I don't think even Smriti Irani is in the decision making elite. So while they are in very powerful roles and they are very well regarded, but I mean they're very prominent. But I don't think they're part of the political decision making and part of the mainstream. So I think this is a problem in every party. Mayawati, for example, a woman leader who led the BSP, Mayawati never gave tickets to women. She gave just about 6% tickets to women. Jayalalitha never gave tickets to women, although Jayalalitha had a slew of welfare measures for women politicians for a long time. It's only Mamata Banerjee who's actually walking the talk on women. She's giving 40% reservation, 40% tickets to women. Far higher than 33%, 40% tickets to women in Lok Sabha. Of the 39 constituencies that Trinamool contested in 2019, 17 were women. So, she's consistently giving representation to women. Women-headed parties, whether it's Jayalalitha or Mayawati, don't give representation to women. It's almost as if they don't want to be boxed into the woman corner. We're not actually women. We don't want to be associated with women and women's issues. So it's only now that women have with the woman vote bank has become so important that parties are paying attention to the women voter, because earlier they never used to. Our own politics be competing in that safe space. No, why? I mean, why should there have to be a law that by law 33% has to be given to women? It should be a natural thing that you should give it to women. You should give talented women tickets. I mean, now that I'm in politics, I see. I mean, in the Trinamool, there are so many. I mean, there are amazingly talented women speakers. Amazingly talented women politicians, and they're just not. Nobody gives them space. They're not given. I mean, in Trinamool, they are given more space than anybody else. But in other political parties, they're simply not given space. So I think that. A lot needs to be done in this regard.
Women playing a much better role in the next few years.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, and thank you so much, Sagarika and Payal, for a very interesting session. I think we all agree to that, and it's given us a lot of insights into the political scene right now. I'm Esha Datta, SAS Woman of Kolkata, and I'd also like to thank our regular patrons, Sri Cements Limited. Thank you for your unflinching support. I extend our sincerest gratitude to each one of you for your continued support to all our sessions. A special note of gratitude goes out to our venue partner, Taj Bengal, for their impeccable hospitality as always, and the media partner, My Kolkata. Prabha Khaitan Foundation encourages cross-cultural exchanges in all our events. We try to invoke a local touch through our food, clothing, mementos, encouraging and supporting artisans and craftsmen from India. To felicitate the author and the conversationalist, we have chosen a giveaway of Dokra. Dokra is an art form that spanned millennia, that is known to have originated from India, and it's prevalent in the states of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and Orissa. This art form is made with the use of the lost wax technique through the procedure of non-ferrous metal casting. It is believed to have originated from the city of Mohenjo-daro 45,000 years ago. To felicitate Sagarika and Payal today, could I please request Nandita Pal Chaudhary to do the honors?
Ma'am, just thank you. This one go. शंभो शिव शंकर महादेव शंभो शिव शंकर शरण आवत तुम्हारे अभयंकर शरण आवत तुम्हारे धरा वायु आकाश के